Yeah, I've just gone on to a desk mic. Just checking, see if you're getting me okay.
Hello and welcome back to Perk Industries. Yes, Perk. Now it's been a long time. I haven't done one of these videos since probably back in July 2020 when we had a look at the modular turntable conversion based on an idea by Lohman Campbell. But either way, that was our last project back, as I say, July, a long time ago. We've been busy writing music, recording things, projects, art, kind of pieces as well. So there's been lots of sort of other projects on the go. But recently there's been a bit of a change to how I've been making sound in here, in this room. If you originally remember that last video back in July, and then also going back to the modifications we made to the monotrons, the Korg monotrons, they were both kind of geared up and more sort of centric for thinking about using control voltage. And dare I say, despite my best efforts to resist it, and even going to the extent of the car boot Eurorack to make my own Eurorack, I've actually succumbed big time. Since then, I've adopted a doorless approach to recording, using Eurorack modules to do this, and some people don't like it, and some people are quite purist about it. The whole coast system of whatever style of Eurorack you choose to have is not necessarily something I'm interested in. I've built a synth that is tailored to my needs, with a series of voices, a series of other modules that can be used to patch things in and out. As I said, I wanted a different attitude and an approach than, you know, the sort of American take on East Coast, West Coast modular systems. I've got a number of samplers, for example. I output out different sounds to the SP404 you can see over my shoulder. So it's not strictly a purist Eurorack system, but what I like is the approach of getting away from staring at a computer and writing music visually. I wanted to go back to listening more, and not necessarily giving too much credence to what it looks like on screen. So that's been really exciting over the last year, and putting that system together has been good fun. It's been very Moorish. This does come with a disclaimer: Eurorack's dangerous. You know, you need some deep pockets for this if you really want to achieve what you're after. But it has changed my workflow, and it's been a really interesting sort of journey. And it's also sort of triggered some other thoughts which I've had for a while, which was always about integrating circuit bent artifacts that you may have seen. And the last couple of weeks I've been going back to my boxes and boxes of kids' toys that I've hoarded. You'll see the shelf just above here is full of toys that do basically sit in a pile waiting to be modified. But my issues, I guess, with circuit bending and the addition of that to something Eurorack based is that circuit bent toys traditionally aren't very musical, and it is hard to get them to become more musical. It's hard to get them integrated into a system if you're not necessarily into cutesy baby noises and things like that. So you've got to be quite selective in some of the things that you pick up and some of the things that you start to bend. The bends are there is lots to do, but it really is what you want to get from it. So, you know, if you want 8-bit sort of glitchy sounds, then we've very recently, and we might do this in a bit more detail, looked at modifying an Xbox controller. So here's one that we've modified, and basically it's got a number of inputs and outputs soldered into it so that you can add that to Eurorack. So that's just one example. There have been others. For example, this is the legacy hand keyboard, and this has a series, an array of CV inputs at the top, and this has been quite good, as well as some other potential bends here in terms of gain, a pitch wheel here, and we'll talk about some of these approaches later on. So my aim was to try and incorporate some of these circuit bent instruments and to try and get them to play vaguely melodically. Like I said, I wasn't particularly interested in just, you know, goo goo gaga kids' toy noises. I wanted to go a little bit further with it than that. And the other aspect of the circuit bent gear is that it's hard to play. It's hard to play live. It's hard for it to be reliable. They often break. Fronting one of my bands, I often use this. This is a circuit bent mobile phone. In fact, the band Flybums, I've got a song called My Phone.
Hi there, how are you? See the talking, chitter chatter on the phone today. How are you? I'm fine too. There's so much to say.
What's that, RT?
Hi, are you there? Bye-bye.
Which revolves around this, and I'm not even sure if it still works. No, it again proves the point that it you know, these sorts of things do break quick, but the song itself is based around this. It's quite simply just some modifications with a couple of switches. One of the switches has even just fallen inside there, and this was the intro to the song as we played it, and that came out. The sound came out of a jack, and we put that through the PA. But it's been held around in true heavy metal style, so they are very fragile. But I wanted to use the Eurorack in an effort to try and allow a bit of control and manipulation about when events happened with some of these different circuit bent toys, and they do often tend to be toys. I've been experimenting with some drum machines recently, kids' drum pads, and trying to figure out a way to get the Eurorack, not that side, to send pulses, so triggers, gates, and in some cases control voltage to toys via just a mono mini jack lead, and then have the Eurorack at the centre, the heartbeat of how this works, and have that then control all of the toys. Here's a short video of one of those events where we managed to get the whole system talking to a bunch of different toys. Here's a quick snippet of that. And that was really the culmination of really what I was trying to achieve, trying to get as much of the toys involved with the Eurorack as possible. And it's not a cut and dry art. It's not black and white. There are a number of factors that can inhibit this from working. Before we get into what that all is, there's some important facts to know about Eurorack. The power itself is a concern when it comes to having the addition of some of the circuit bent toys. Power is really the main issue, because the whole system can be powered by anywhere sort of around plus or minus 12 volts. So that's AC in terms of how that system is powered. And that's because audio itself can be plus or minus 10 volts, which can get quite hot. The control voltage itself, which will talk between Eurorack module systems in terms of notes. If you say takes the note C3, that should always be sort of set to 0 volts, and then you can have scales of octaves going up and down according to what voltage is coming out of that wire, that cable. So that can go, yeah, all the way up to sort of 8 volts plus volts or minus, again AC. But then the interesting bit is when you look at gates and triggers and clock pulses, those things can sort of be really anywhere between sort of 0 volts and 5 volts plus. Certainly in the case of some of the triggers, it can be as small as sort of 0.9 volts, and that can be really good with circuit bent artifacts. So, for example, let's go back to the phone. You could, in place of some of these buttons, you could wire in parallel with that a jack socket that could come out. So, another example would be if we look at some of these here. Some of these bends at the top, some of these female jacks here, are wired in directly to some of the sounds in the keyboard. So, whereas you'd normally press the button for the snare, it would trigger the snare sound via one of the jacks. Now these are often membrane switches which sit on top of a circuit board, and they're often quite hard to try and successfully bend. They're hard because they're hard to solder onto, to add a wire and solder that physically to the board. So wherever possible, I try and find artifacts and toys and whatever it is that you're bending with through hole if possible. So the older the toy is, often the better, but not always. And they also have access to the ICs, so they're not always covered in blobs, black horrible blobs that sort of protect and cover that IC to stop you from getting to it and bending it. So there are a few issues with doing that, and the other is how the circuit is working. Some of those membrane switches are looking just to complete a circuit, like a push to make switch. So you press that switch, it will trigger the sound. But in other circuits, it's looking for it to be pulled low or high, depending on how that circuit is designed and what happens, what event takes place when you press that button. I found that through trial and error that you can actually pulse a trigger or a clock from the Eurorack, and it will often complete that circuit and it will fire that according to whatever the tempo is that you set. And a module I've been using a lot for that is Marbles. Now Marbles is situated here. It is a Mutable Instruments Eurorack module that offers random. It creates 3 different sort of clock pulses out, as well as 3 different CV signals out. And what I found through trial and error is that if you've got a very low voltage small toy, if you give it some CV, that is a control voltage that could end up being minus 8 volts or plus 8 volts, the chances are you're going to fry it. It's not going to be particularly stable, and you're going to get that horrible smell, maybe a puff of smoke, and it's goodbye to your toy. Okay, so let's have a look at Vactrols. In terms of what you'll need, well, you'll need standard LED. There are theories about which colours offer the best sort of system in terms of lumens when interacted with an LDR. I'd suggest something like a 1K resistor, also attached to the long leg, the anode, or the positive leg to protect it from any CV signals. Here is an LDR, quite a large one, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I'd also advise that you maybe use a switch as well. Say for example you want to keep the original pitch of the circuit bent toy, you might switch your LDR on and off depending on how you design that circuit. So how does this work? Well, I think the first thing to do is to understand that if you have CV, and that CV is going to come in from your Eurorack, then what you'll need to do is to have your resistor, as I said, 1K would be probably enough, going to your LED, and that LED there will have a negative leg, and that will come back around so that you have, in terms of the CV, you have a positive, the tip of the jack, if you like, and then the outer of the jack is the negative. The other side, the LDR, well, what you'll be doing is you'll be replacing a resistor that will already be part of your toy that you have. Alright, so you're going to be either removing that or replacing it with your LDR. In terms of the points, you'll still need to keep those same 2 points even if you remove that resistor. The LDR then goes in situ, and like we said, that LDR is responsive to the light of your LED. That can then be soldered in place. You can, as I said, choose to substitute in a switch, and that will be something you'll have to have a play with, but that is the sort of very basics of it. In terms of how you actually do it, well, what I tend to do is to tape the two very much close together. I'll use some tape to wrap that around. This LDR is probably a little bit on the large side, and what I tend to do sometimes is to get a smaller LDR and use the rubber LED bezels that you may have seen. Here is an LED, or a pair of LED bezels. Quite simply, what you do with these is, when you can find the holes, the LED will slot into place. Let's use a smaller LDR. So you can see the size difference here between these two LDRs. One is pretty chunky, one's quite small. Take the smaller one, and what you can do is to take that LDR with the legs popping through the bottom of the bezel and pull it right through. And then if you take the LED in the other bezel, you can marry the two together and create a sort of DIY Vactrol. As I said, I'd then use some insulating tape. And this isn't the best way of doing it, but it is a very straightforward approach and does seem to work. And I'm just going to tape those two together very quickly just for the sake of this. And now we've got here how that would almost look in the diagram. You've got your LED legs, the anode, which is the longer leg which goes to the tip of the jack, the shorter leg which goes to the outer, and then at the other side, the LDR side, you've then got two terminals which you can put in place of what was the pitch resistor in whatever toy you had. So that's like a sort of dirty quick guide to Vactrols. They're very popular. There's lots of information on the Muff Wigglers forum if you're interested in finding out some more about playing with those Vactrols. I suggest you read up on what the experts are doing. But yeah, that's a quick and easy, straightforward guide to doing these things. The other key things that you'll need for this, I'll just pull this drawer out, is you will need mini jacks, female ones, and these are really good to mount onto the case of the toy. My favourite, which tends to be just a couple of pounds on eBay, is this style, because you can have a little washer that will go around the outside and that will tighten up onto the case. Others, you might find these that are circuit mounted, and these can be quite popular. Again, they have the threaded outside so you can attach it to the case. Although anything will do. If you can forage and reclaim, there is all sorts of different jacks. There's one that will sit on a wire, and there's another version of a circuit mounted jack as well. That is perfect for attaching to the Eurorack. Whilst we're talking about attaching to Eurorack, these are the general sort of all-purpose Eurorack cables. I find for what they are to be really expensive, and you know, they do the trick, but I just find that I've never got enough length in these things when I try and connect things together in the system, and to buy a pack of these again isn't particularly cheap. What I have found though is you tend to find a bit more often is in cheaper budget shops, supermarkets, you'll find these all the time, and these are stereo auxiliary cables or aux leads to connect MP3 players to car stereos, or you know, like kind of small mini speakers. You might have loads of these knocking around the house. These work fine with Eurorack. I've been using these. This one is probably just shy of 1 meter long, but it allows me to connect things that are further apart. It also allows me to connect my Eurorack output, which, despite it being quite hot, quite a lively output, I can pop an adapter onto that, and those adapters could be stereo, like this one, and you might even find that you might get some jacks that are mono, and they work as well. I plug that straight into my mixer, and that then goes into my audio interface to record what I'm doing in terms of modular. Whilst we're on the subject of bargains, another good bargain that you sometimes might choose to use in Eurorack is the splitter. And if you were to buy what we call a mult, which is a multiplier, this is a passive one, so it will take any signal that you pop into it. So for example, if you wanted to take CV from one device and plug it in there, you could then plug in lots of other artifacts into that, whatever that might be, and it will share and split that signal. Again, these are pretty expensive for what they are. You can find similar sort of stereo ones. This is one I found in Tesco's, and this has got 6 possible connections there, and that was reduced in Tesco. But even better than that, you don't always need 6. Here is just a normal headphone splitter. This works brilliant on Eurorack, I found. These you can get in the UK and Poundland for, guess what, £1. So yeah, they're a really good idea, and they come in all sorts of colours and shapes and sizes as well. So I find those to be quite useful when sort of distributing signals with Eurorack. So that's just another idea there as well. Let's have a listen to some more things that we've made using the Eurorack and the circuit bent approach.
You. One more time. You again? Sorry. Sorry.